I always believed that my life was perfect. At least, that's what I told myself every morning when I woke up beside the man I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. My husband, Daniel, was charming, successful, and seemed to love me in ways that made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. We had been married for 7 years, and in that time we built what I thought was a solid foundation of trust and love. But that was before I discovered the secret that almost cost me my life. Before I take you on this journey, let me warn you. This isn't just another story about betrayal. This is about deception, survival, and vengeance. And as you listen, I want you to ask yourself, if you were in my shoes, how far would you go to protect yourself? So grab a seat and listen carefully, because every twist matters. It started like any ordinary Thursday morning. I woke up early, brewed a pot of coffee, and went about my usual routine. Daniel had already left for work, as he always did, by 6:30 sharp. He was punctual to a fault, a trait I used to admire about him. As I sat by the window sipping my coffee, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You don't know me, but you deserve to know the truth about your husband." I frowned, my heart skipping a beat. My first instinct was to delete it. People get random spam messages all the time, right? But something about those words felt personal, intimate, almost as if whoever sent them knew me. Curiosity won. "Who is this?" I typed back quickly. The reply came almost instantly. "Meet me at Cafe Verde at 2 p.m. today. It's about Daniel. If you don't come, you'll regret it." My hand trembled around my phone. I didn't know what to think. Was this a scam? A prank? Or was Daniel hiding something from me? I told myself not to overreact. Daniel was a good man, or at least that's what I believed. He had provided for me, supported my dreams, and never given me a reason to doubt his love. Still, that message gnawed at my mind all morning. By 1:30, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat, slipped in some jeans and sneakers, and drove across town to Cafe Verde. My heart pounded as I walked in and scanned the room. That's when I saw her. A woman, mid-30s, beautiful in a sharp, cold way that sent chills down my spine. She had Daniel's same warm brown eyes, though hers were filled with something darker. Anger, maybe. Hatred. She raised her hand slightly, signaling me over. "Are you—" I started, my voice trembling. "Yes." She cut me off sharply. "Sit." I hesitated, but obeyed. "Who are you? What is this about my husband?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Your husband, Daniel, is also my husband." The words hit me like a physical blow. My mind went blank. My throat closed up. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "That's not possible. Daniel would never—" She slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a photo of Daniel, holding 2 children, a boy and a girl who looked about 5 and 8 years old. In the photo, he was smiling, his arms wrapped around them in a way that was unmistakably loving and paternal. The woman's voice turned icy. "My name is Vanessa. I've been with Daniel for 9 years. We have 2 children together. And you? You're his other life." I couldn't breathe. The cafe spun around me. Vanessa continued, her tone laced with venom. "While you've been living in your cozy little dream world, he's been lying to both of us. But I'm not here to compete with you. I'm here to warn you. Daniel is dangerous, and he'll do whatever it takes to protect his secret. And if you don't get out now, you won't survive." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Why are you telling me this? Why come to me?" She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Because Daniel has changed. He's been cold lately, even with me and the kids, and I've started to suspect he's planning something. Last week, I overheard him talking on the phone about tying up loose ends. Her guys locked with mine. Loose ends, my dear? Like you. That night, I confronted Daniel. When he came home, I was sitting in the living room, Vanessa's words still echoing in my head. He kissed my forehead like nothing was wrong. "How was your day, babe?" he asked, loosening his tie. I forced a smile. "Eventful. Daniel, there's something we need to talk about." His eyes flickered just for a split second before he masked it with his usual calm demeanor. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "Are you seeing someone else?" For the briefest moment, his jaw tightened. Then just as quickly, he laughed. A smooth, practiced laugh. "Where is this coming from? You know I'd never cheat on you." I wanted to scream at him, to throw Vanessa's words and that photo in his face, but something inside me whispered to wait, to play along. Because if Vanessa was right and Daniel really was dangerous, confronting him outright could be a fatal mistake. So I simply shook my head and smiled weakly. Forget I said anything. I guess I'm just tired. He wrapped his arms around me, but instead of feeling safe, I felt trapped, like a deer caught in a hunter's sights. The next few days were torture. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time Daniel touched me, I flinched internally. I started noticing things I had overlooked before. The way he always kept his phone face down, the sudden business trips that came up out of nowhere, the whispered conversations in the hallway when he thought I was asleep. And then, the incident happened. It was a Sunday evening. Daniel had offered to make me a special dinner. He was unusually cheerful as he set the table and poured me a glass of wine. "Here's to us," he said, raising his glass. Something about the way he watched me made my stomach knot. I forced a smile, clinking my glass with his, but when he wasn't looking, I only pretended to sip. Halfway through the meal, my vision started to blur. My limbs felt heavy. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Daniel's voice was strangely calm. "Are you okay, honey? You don't look so good." I stumbled to my feet, clutching the edge of the table. My instincts screamed at me, "Run." So I did. I locked myself in the bathroom, trembling as I dialed 911. But before I could hit call, I heard Daniel's voice through the door. "Sweetheart," he crooned, almost mockingly, "why are you making this difficult? Just come out. We'll talk about it." I pressed my back against the door, holding my breath. That's when I realized the horrible truth. Daniel had poisoned me. I survived that night by sheer willpower. I waited until I heard him leave the house, then crawled out the window and drove myself to the hospital. The doctors confirmed my suspicions. The wine had been laced with a dangerous sedative, one that could have stopped my heart if I'd consumed enough. When they asked me who had done this, I lied. I said it must have been food poisoning, because now I had a plan. If Daniel wanted to destroy me, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to beat him at his own game. When I left the hospital that morning, I didn't go home. I couldn't, not yet. Instead, I checked into a small, discreet motel on the edge of town, somewhere Daniel would never think to look for me. Lying there in the stale-smelling room, staring up at the cracked ceiling, I replayed every moment of the last few days. The poisoned wine, his voice at the bathroom door, Vanessa's warning. Daniel wanted me dead. That much was certain. But why? Why not just divorce me? Why take it this far? The more I thought about it, the more I realized there was only one possible explanation: money. Daniel and I shared several joint accounts. We had property in both our names. If I died, he stood to inherit almost everything. My blood boiled at the thought. I could have gone to the police right then. I had enough suspicion to at least get their attention. But then I thought about Daniel's charm, his way of twisting words and manipulating situations. He'd probably talk his way out of it, and I'd end up looking like the crazy wife who'd lost her mind. No. If I wanted to win, I couldn't just survive. I needed to destroy him completely. And for that, I needed proof. The first person I contacted was Vanessa. I used a burner phone I'd purchased from a gas station to call her. When she answered, her voice was tense. "Who is this?" "It's me," I said quietly. "We need to meet, but this time, somewhere safe." There was a pause. "After what happened last time, I don't know if I can trust you." "You don't have to trust me. But if we don't work together, Daniel wins. And I don't think either of us wants that." Another long pause. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. There's an abandoned parking lot behind the old train station. Be there at midnight." When I arrived, Vanessa was already waiting, her car parked under a broken streetlight. She looked exhausted, her eyes hollow. "Did he hurt you?" she asked the moment I got out of my car. "Almost," I admitted. "He tried to poison me." Her face paled. "I knew it. I knew he was planning something." I told her everything. The wine, the hospital, how I'd escaped. By the time I finished, Vanessa was pacing in circles, her hands clenched into fists. "This man, he played both of us for fools. He lied, cheated, and now he wants you dead. I wouldn't put it past him to come after me next." "That's why we have to act," I said firmly. "We need to gather evidence, prove that he's a liar, a polygamist, and a murderer in the making." Vanessa stopped pacing and turned to me. "Do you have a plan?" A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Oh, I have more than a plan. I have a strategy, but you need to be willing to play your part." She nodded without hesitation. "For my children, for my future, I'll do anything." The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception. I returned home to Daniel, acting as though nothing had happened. I smiled, I laughed, I even kissed him goodnight. Inside, I was screaming. But on the outside, I played the role of the perfect, oblivious wife. Daniel seemed pleased, almost smug. He thought his plan was still working. Meanwhile, Vanessa and I were digging deep. We went through public records, traced bank accounts, even followed Daniel on nights when he claimed to be working late. What we found was worse than we ever imagined. Daniel wasn't just a liar. He was a criminal mastermind. He had multiple identities across different states. He'd embezzled money from his company, laundered it through shell businesses, and funneled it into offshore accounts. And he was using both of us to maintain the illusion of a stable, respectable life. Vanessa's voice trembled with rage when we uncovered the final piece of the puzzle, a document showing that in the event of my death, Daniel would receive a massive life insurance payout. "Now we know why he wanted you dead," she said, slamming the papers onto the table. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. "Then we'll give him what he wants. I said darkly. Except this time, he'll be the one to fall. The first rule of taking down a man like Daniel was simple. Never let him see you sweat. Every day I woke up and played my part flawlessly. I cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his dry jokes, even massaged his shoulders after work. If he noticed my hands trembling when I touched him, he didn't comment. If he sensed my hatred simmering beneath the surface, he didn't acknowledge it. He was confident, too confident. Daniel had spent years deceiving two women and building a web of lies. In his mind, I was just another pawn he could control. But what he didn't know was that I'd stopped being his pawn the night he tried to poison me. Vanessa and I met in secret almost every other night. Sometimes it was in my car, parked under a bridge, other times in her basement with the lights off and the windows covered. We shared everything we discovered: bank records, fake IDs, recorded conversations. It felt like we were slowly assembling a puzzle, each piece revealing just how dangerous Daniel really was. Vanessa would show up with folders full of documents, her hair disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. "He's hiding more than just the two of us," she whispered one night. "I found a property deed in another woman's name. He's been using it to funnel money out of the country." My chest tightened. "Another woman?" "Not like us," Vanessa said quickly. "I think it's just a fake identity he uses, but still, this man isn't just a cheater, he's a con artist, and if we don't stop him, he'll destroy us both." I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. Then it's time we set the trap. To bring Daniel down, we needed him to incriminate himself openly and undeniably. That meant recordings, witnesses, and irrefutable proof. So I started planting seeds. Little hints in our conversations that I was feeling insecure, vulnerable, and ready to trust him completely. One night over dinner, I smiled sweetly and said, "You know, Daniel, I've been thinking about the future. Maybe we should update our wills, just to make sure everything's in order." His fork froze halfway to his mouth. "Why the sudden interest in that?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. I shrugged casually. "No reason. I want to make sure you and I are taken care of, together." Slowly, the suspicion melted from his face, replaced with a warm smile. "Of course, sweetheart. That's very thoughtful of you." Inside, I wanted to scream, but outside, I reached across the table and squeezed his hand like the loving wife he thought I was. That conversation was the first breadcrumb, the first step in making him believe I was completely blind to his schemes. Meanwhile, Vanessa was playing her own role. When Daniel visited her and the kids, she acted distant, cold. She'd accuse him of neglect, hint at wanting to leave. "I can't keep living like this, Daniel," she told him one night, recording the entire conversation on her phone. "You disappear for days, you don't answer my calls. Are you hiding something from me?" Daniel, desperate to keep her from unraveling his cover, started making mistakes. He slipped up in his stories, contradicted himself, even revealed details about his finances he never meant to share. Every slip was another nail in his coffin. The first big mistake. About 3 weeks into our plan, Daniel made a mistake so monumental, it almost felt like fate was on our side. It was a Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner when Daniel came home looking unusually frazzled. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled, and his hand shook slightly as he poured himself a drink. "Tough day at work?" I asked, keeping my tone light and playful. "You could say that," he muttered, downing the whiskey in one gulp. I pretended to focus on the cutting board, but inside, my senses were on high alert. Something had rattled him. "Anything you want to talk about?" I asked, casually. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, just business problems." Later that night, while he showered, I searched his briefcase. At the very bottom, under a stack of invoices, I found a crumpled piece of paper with a handwritten note. Transfer complete, final payment due Friday. Make sure she's gone before then. My blood ran cold. I didn't need to ask who she was. I snapped a photo of the note with my burner phone and slipped it back exactly where I found it. This was it. Concrete proof that Daniel wasn't just plotting against me, he'd set a deadline for my murder. Setting the stage. When I showed Vanessa the photo the next day, her face turned pale. "Oh my God," she whispered, "he's really going to do it." "We don't just have to stop him," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "We have to catch him in the act." Vanessa nodded slowly. "What's your plan?" I laid it out carefully. Daniel's biggest weakness is his ego. He believes he's smarter than everyone else. So we'll use that against him. We'll give him a situation where he thinks he's in control, but every move he makes will be recorded. "And then," Vanessa asked. "And then," I said with a cold smile, "we destroy him publicly in front of everyone he cares about." The psychological warfare. The following week was pure theater. I acted even more loving and devoted, while Vanessa grew colder and more distant. Daniel's paranoia began to show. He started questioning me about where I'd been, who I'd talked to. Sometimes he'd even call me in the middle of the day just to check in. I'd giggle and tell him I was at the grocery store or visiting a friend, all while secretly meeting with Vanessa to plan our next move. Vanessa, on the other hand, was sowing seeds of distrust. She hinted at knowing things she shouldn't, dropping vague comments like, "Daniel, I hope you're being honest with me, because if I find out you're not, I don't know what I'll do." The more she pushed, the more desperate Daniel became to keep her calm, and desperation leads to mistakes. The first major crack appeared when Daniel came home one night and confronted me. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. He demanded, "Where were you this afternoon?" "I was at yoga class," I replied smoothly, not missing a beat. "Don't lie to me," he roared, slamming his fist on the table. I flinched dramatically, letting tears well up in my eyes. "Daniel, you're scaring me. What's going on with you?" His anger faltered. For a moment, he just stared at me, breathing hard. Then he muttered something about work stress and stormed off to his office. Little did he know, Vanessa and I had bugged that office 2 days earlier. Every phone call, every whispered plan, it was all being recorded. 2 nights before the final payment deadline, Daniel made his boldest move yet. He suggested a romantic dinner at home, the exact same setup he'd used the night he first tried to poison me. My gut twisted, but I smiled sweetly and agreed. "Of course, darling, I'll make dessert." That night, as he prepared the meal, I secretly recorded everything with a hidden camera tucked inside a decorative vase. I watched closely as he uncorked a bottle of wine and poured 2 glasses. When he handed me mine, I raised it in a toast. "To us," I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "To us," he echoed, a faint smirk on his lips. But instead of drinking, I set my glass down, pretending to be distracted by my phone. Minutes later, when Daniel excused himself to take a call, I switched the glasses. When he returned, we clinked glasses again, and this time, he drank. Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he set his empty wine glass down on the table. For a man who prided himself on control, that tiny twitch told me everything I needed to know. He was already feeling the effects. "Wow," he said with a forced laugh, rubbing his temple. "Guess I didn't eat enough today. This wine is hitting me harder than usual." I forced a light chuckle, hiding the surge of adrenaline rushing through me. "Oh, maybe you just need some food in your system," I said sweetly, sliding the plate closer to him. "Eat up, darling." He didn't suspect a thing. Why would he? In his mind, I was still the naive, adoring wife he could manipulate at will. Inside, I was counting down the minutes. The sedative wasn't strong enough to harm him, I wasn't a killer, but it was potent enough to weaken him, to make him just disoriented enough for what was coming next. When Daniel excused himself to take another business call, I quickly sent a single text to Vanessa. Phase 1 complete. It's time. The next day was crucial. It was the day Daniel had scheduled a massive celebration, a fundraiser gala for his company. There would be business partners, family members, friends, even local news outlets present. The perfect stage for his destruction. I dressed carefully, choosing a sleek black gown and subtle makeup. I wanted to look poised and calm, the very picture of a devoted wife standing by her husband's side. When Daniel saw me, he smiled with a warmth that made my skin crawl. "You look incredible," he said, kissing my cheek. "So do you, darling," I replied smoothly, forcing a smile. "Tonight's going to be unforgettable." He had no idea how right I was. Vanessa showed up at the gala 30 minutes after we did. She looked stunning, elegant, and composed, but I could see the fire burning in her eyes beneath the calm exterior. Daniel spotted her from across the room and nearly choked on his drink. For a split second, panic flashed across his face. "What is she doing here?" he hissed under his breath. "Who, darling?" "That woman," he growled. I think she's from a rival company. I'll handle it." I nodded, pretending to be clueless, while inside, I was practically trembling with anticipation. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Daniel spent the next 20 minutes trying to corner Vanessa, clearly hoping to convince her to leave quietly. I watched them from a distance, my phone discreetly recording the entire exchange. Vanessa played her role perfectly. She looked wounded, betrayed, and just loud enough for those nearby to overhear fragments of their conversation. "How could you do this to me, Daniel?" she demanded, her voice breaking just slightly. "After everything we've been through, our family, our children?" Several heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Daniel's face went pale. "Keep your voice down," he snapped, glancing around nervously. "This isn't the time or place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time and place," Vanessa shot back, her tone rising. The murmurs grew louder. People were beginning to piece things together. The reveal. I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the polished floor, and raised my voice just enough to command attention. "Actually," I said calmly, "this is the perfect time." Daniel spun around, his eyes wide. "Sweetheart," he stammered, "what are you doing?" I smiled coldly, "Giving you exactly what you deserve." Then I turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting your evening, but there's something you all need to know about my husband." Gasps filled the room. Daniel lunged towards me, but Vanessa grabbed his arm, holding him back. I pulled out a small remote and pressed a button. Behind me, a large projector screen lit up, and the first video began to play. It was a compilation of every incriminating piece of evidence Vanessa and I had gathered over the past month. Recordings of Daniel admitting to juggling 2 families, phone conversations about moving money offshore, the note I'd photographed with the words, "Make sure she's gone before then." The final clip was Daniel himself, speaking to Vanessa just 2 nights ago, his voice cold and emotionless. "Don't worry, Vanessa. Once she's out of the picture, everything will be perfect. Just trust me." The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts, even a few screams. Daniel's business partners looked horrified. Several people pulled out their phones, recording everything. The local news crew, sensing the story of the year, began filming live. "No," Daniel roared, shoving Vanessa aside. "This is a setup. None of this is true." "Oh, it's true," I said, my voice steady and strong. "And here's the best part. Law enforcement has been listening too." Right on cue, the double doors swung open. 2 police officers entered, flanked by a federal agent in a dark suit. "Daniel Carter, you are under arrest for fraud, bigamy, attempted murder, and conspiracy." He froze, his face draining of color. "This is insane," he shouted. "She's lying. They're both lying. I didn't do anything." But the officers were already moving. One grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back as they cuffed him. As they read him his rights, Daniel's eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw something other than arrogance or manipulation. I saw fear. "You think you've won?" he snarled, his voice cracking. "This isn't over." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "Oh, Daniel," I whispered, "it's been over since the moment you tried to poison me." His mouth opened in shock, but before he could respond, the officers dragged him away.
The following days were a whirlwind. The story went viral almost instantly. "Double-life husband exposed at gala," blared across headlines. News stations replayed the footage of Daniel's arrest on a loop. His business collapsed overnight. His accounts were frozen, his assets seized, his name ruined beyond repair. Vanessa and I testified together, our bond forged through shared pain and victory. While we were never friends in the traditional sense, we became allies, survivors. Daniel, meanwhile, faced decades in prison. One quiet evening, weeks later, Vanessa and I sat together watching our kids play in the park. She turned to me, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "how we didn't see it sooner? How we both fell for his lies?" I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, Daniel was a master manipulator, but in the end, he underestimated us. A small smile touched her lips. He really did. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of laughter and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Finally, I turned to her and said, "You know, we didn't just survive him. We beat him at his own game." Vanessa nodded. "And we won." To my viewers, I want to leave you with this. Sometimes the people closest to us are hiding the darkest secrets. If you ever feel that something is off, trust your instincts. They might just save your life. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have played along like I did or gone straight to the police? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another tale like this. Remember, you never really know someone until the mask comes off.